The year was 1975, and while much of the world was dancing to disco, Marshall Amplifiers was set to release an amp that would change the landscape of rock music forever. That amp was the JMP 2203, and it became the new standard in rock amplification. You see, from the mid-70s to the late 80s here in Hollywood, it's hard to find a band in the rock and metal scene that wasn't using a 2203. AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Motley Crue, Slayer, Anthrax, all of these bands were really well-known 2203 users. But the amp transcended rock and became popular with players outside of that scene, like Jeff Beck or Andy Summers from the Police. The most groundbreaking change in the Marshall lineage was the 2203's master volume circuit, and that allowed the player to control the preamp volume and the power amp volume individually. So essentially you could turn the preamp volume up and get crunchy, distorted saturation while limiting the overall volume of the amp in the room by bringing the master volume down. Or you could turn the preamp volume down and turn the master volume up and get classic 60s Marshall tones. See, it wasn't just practical, it allowed for an amp that could sound modern or vintage and many shades in between. This Softube plug-in model is based on Marshall's own 2203 Golden unit from their own private archives. And when you open up the plug-in, you're going to see the controls of the amplifier that allow you to dial in your sound. But like the other Marshalls from Softube, it has a channel strip which gives you access to microphone selection, panning, and levels. And the 2203 also has a 3-band EQ and a noise gate for even more control. All four of the Marshalls on the UAD platform feature something called Unison technology. And Unison technology is software controlled over the physical impedance on the high Z input for next-gen Apollos and the Apollo Twin. What it means is that when we plug our guitars into that high Z input, our pickups believe they're plugging into the same input as you'd get from a physical Marshall amplifier. Now let's walk through a handful of available sounds. First, let's burn it with a nice classic crunchy distorto guitar. And this is a great example of driving the preamp to the max for the distortion with medium gain in the power section. I'm also using a touch of Real Verb Pro, which is included with all Apollos to complete the sound. The 2203 is also great for bright, clean tones with lots of body. You get this by gently driving the preamp and gaining up the power section. I've also EQ'd the low and top ends using both amp EQ and channel strip EQ to fill it out and make it shimmer. Finally, we've got a little stereo flanging going on an aux with the precision mix rack delay that comes with Apollo. Now, let's go over the top with a huge tone that's great for drop detuning or E-flat. Again, I'm driving the preamp hard and backing off on the power section for a massive but controlled distortion. This time, I'm putting the plug-in on an aux return for a stereo output and using an SM7B and SM57 panned wide. The Marshall JMP 2203 is one of 4 Softube plugins on the UAD platform. Between the 1962 Bluesbreaker Combo, the 1959 Super Lead Plexi, the 2555 Silver Jubilee, and this JMP 2203, you can get lost in the myriad of inspiring tones that are available right at your fingertips. And they come to you without the high cost and loud volume associated with owning vintage Marshalls. And they're available exclusively for UAD2 hardware and Apollo interfaces.